Going to do a roll call to open the meeting. Dr. Beal,
Present.
Ms. Hayes,
Here.
Mr. McCarthy,
Here.
Mrs. McGovern,
Here.
Mrs. Parlamas,
Here.
Mrs. Talarico,
Here.
Mrs. Tortorella,
Here.
Mr. Weinstein,
Here.
Ms. Gilman. Thank you.
Hey, everyone, welcome to our work meeting this evening. Natalie Tortorello, Board Vice President. I am substituting for Irene Gilman this evening. So I will keep the president's report very brief. Just want to say that many of my colleagues were able to attend the New Jersey School Boards Conference a couple of weeks ago, where they had the opportunity to see some of our students being acknowledged, TOIS for Sustainable Jersey, and then the Wanamasa students for their steam tank. So I'm not going to talk too much about it tonight. We will be recognizing them at a future regular meeting, but wanted to acknowledge that as it's pretty exciting stuff for the district. Okay, so now we'll get down to business. Mr. Hastings, superintendent report. Ms. Weldon, superintendent report.
Yes. All right. Good evening, everybody. It's nice to see all the red. I wanted to say that I know you have seen this already, but I did put out an invitation to our community to start our Spartan Alumni Association. And I'm excited to say that we already have 215 responses. And I ask, as we head into the Thanksgiving weekend, that if alumni are home and are visiting and are here for the holiday, that you do anything you can to encourage people to sign up. We shared the link again today, and I will do it again closer to the holiday. But this is exciting. I think it's something long overdue for our district. And, this is our first meeting since we put that out, but it got a lot of great energy at first when it first came out, and I'm pleased with all of these responses. So I'm hoping this organization is something that can work on behalf of our students and our classrooms and our schools in future years. So it's exciting. I was happy to see the great response on that. So thank you, and keep pushing it. And also, this is our last meeting before Thanksgiving. So I just wanted to wish the Board of Education members, the staff, and our larger community a very, very happy Thanksgiving. And thank you for all the support these first few months for me in this position. And that's my report. I'd like to give the rest of my time over to Mrs. Hanson, who's here this evening to present our preschool expansion plan.
Good evening, everyone. Very pleased to present. You'll see on the board agenda the preschool plan for the 24-25 school year. And this presentation will kind of outline that plan. You can go to the next slide, Marianne. So I wanted to start the presentation by just kind of refreshing everybody's memory about why we would apply for the preschool expansion grant through the New Jersey Department of Education. As I'm sure that we all know, providing high quality pre-K to students will show that students will demonstrate less learning, behavioral, and social issues later in life. Public pre-K programs are already required for students with disabilities. So this funding allows us to provide an inclusive program, having general education students in the district, and then we're able to place special education students with them and allow them access to general education programs at a higher rate. And inclusion pre-K results in higher inclusion rates in kindergarten and elementary school. So once we start including children earlier and providing interventions earlier, it results in students being able to be included later on in elementary school. And we get almost 100% funding for our general education students, probably equal to full funding for our general education students. You can move to the next slide, please. So the purpose of the preschool expansion grant is to make sure that we have the more community students that we have in our program, the earlier we're able to identify students in our community that have developmental and learning delays. And we're able to develop preschool through grade 3 programming and articulation from pre-K to K. So we've already had students for 2 years, and we're able to share that information that we're learning about students with our kindergarten teachers, and taking 2 years to really prepare them, get them acclimated behaviorally, academically, and socially to school, and a higher success in kindergarten. Our curriculum that we're supposed to be providing is imaginative play curriculum, which is really beautiful to see when you go into the pre-K classrooms. I always say if I'm having a bad day, I just go walk into a pre-K classroom and immediately puts a smile on my face. They're all playing and learning through play, which fosters self-regulation in students. It fosters social and emotional growth, as well as academic. It's all those pre-academic skills that they're learning through playing with each other. And a high quality preschool student, a high quality inclusive preschool program meets the needs of students by providing that safe, nurturing environment. And it really helps students to learn that school is a safe and happy place. And we get them in a couple of years before they go to kindergarten. So you can go to the next slide. So what are the elements of a high quality preschool program? Because I think a lot of people don't understand the difference between a pre-K program and a high quality pre-K program. The grant that we have is for a high quality pre-K program. And you have to have certain elements in a high quality pre-K program. District-wide planning, community collaboration is big. We have a CPIS person who we just hired, who just started this year, who is engaging the community in the program and engaging parents in our program. It requires parent involvement. It requires curriculum development and implementation that is approved by the New Jersey Department of Ed. We're only allowed to choose from 3 pre-K curricular programs. And the one that we've chosen is creative curriculum. It requires us to include children with disabilities in our general education program. That is a requirement. We have to save seats for students with disabilities. And to the maximum extent possible, obviously, if it's not appropriate for them, we have a self-contained program as well. And it also includes professional development and training. You can move to the next slide. We also have to include certain staff members. We have to have, as part of the program, preschool instructional coaches. Each preschool instructional coach is required only allowed to have 20 classrooms. We actually divide our preschool instructional coaches, because what we do is we have them serve 2 roles. They also are our preschool intervention and referral team specialists. So they each have 10 classrooms, and those 10 classrooms, they're also the PERT team leader. Each classroom is required to have 1 certified teacher and 1 teacher assistant, and is only allowed to have 15 students. And we also are required to have a social worker as part of our team. Right now, our community parent involvement specialist shares the role with social worker because of the size of our program. But there are numbers like involved in all of this. You have to make sure that you have the right percentage of staff for students. You can go to the next slide. Everybody's always asking, what is our preschool universe? Because our preschool universe is that magic number that we're trying to get to so that we can stop expanding. And our preschool universe is basically twice our first grade enrollment. So for the purpose of this presentation, I took our current first grade number and I doubled it just to give you an example. Every year we're given our preschool universe when we get our budget. It's right around this number. So right now, as of today, our preschool universe is 422 students. And the goal of the preschool expansion grant is to continue to work towards providing this free, high quality, full day pre-K program for Ocean Township's preschool universe. At this time, as of today, we're reaching 83% of our pre-K universe. The goal of the preschool expansion grant is to get to 90% of your preschool universe. So we're almost there. And our plan that's outlined in the on the agenda tells how we're going to do that for next school year. So you can go to the next slide. So this slide is just showing the impact that our grant is having. The first set of lines is the percent served of our universe. In 2022-23, we were serving 71% of our pre-K universe. This year, 23-24 school year, we're serving 83% of our pre-K universe. And next year, with the plan that we have in place, we'll actually be meeting 94% of our preschool universe. So we're actually going to be exceeding what the New Jersey Department of Ed requires us to do. The percent, we're having a positive impact on our percent of pre-K students who are classified. So in the 22-23 school year, we had 28% of our preschool students classified. If every seat is filled next year, that means if every seat is filled with special education students and general education students, we will have, 22-23, we were 28%. 23-24, right now, as we stand right now, we're at 22% classified. So we've actually dropped 6% in classification rates, which is a good thing because your average classification rate as a district should be between 18 and 20%. Really, they like to be more like 15%, but 18 to 20% is acceptable. And right now we're at 22%. So that's great. We're heading in the right direction. And our percent of students who are placed in our general education inclusive pre-K program. So in the 22-23 school year, so if you took all of our special education students, the total number, and you looked at how many were placed in our gen ed inclusion program, as opposed to our self-contained special education program, in 22-23, 66% of our preschool students last school year were in our inclusion program. This year, 71% of our students are in our inclusion program. So we've increased that by 5% as well. And our percent of students in self-contained pre-K has gone down. So in last school year, we had 34% of our special education students placed in self-contained, and this year we're at 29%. So we're all, the pre-K grant is having the result that we want. And that's what that slide is showing you, that we're really seeing the effects of the program right now. You can go to the next slide. So our plan for the 24-25 school year, we're going to increase our district classrooms, our in-district pre-K classrooms from 19 to 22. So we're adding 3 gen ed inclusion classrooms. So our total number of students served in those classrooms, 19 classrooms serves 285 students in our inclusion program. And next year we'll be serving 330 students. Plus, we're going to continue to partner with Head Start Acelero, which provides 2 classrooms offsite, serving 30 students. So the total number of students that we'll be serving in our inclusion gen ed program will be 360. This will increase our preschool universe to 94%, like we said. And the best part about this is that we may not have to have a lottery this year. So we're going to see how many applications that we receive. Obviously, if we receive more applications than we have space, then we will do a lottery and we'll have to rethink our 94% universe served. And we may have to continue to expand in order to be able to offer the program to everybody. But we're hoping, fingers crossed, based on our lottery applications over the last few years, this should do it. So we're pretty excited about that. We'll see what happens. We'll go like as if we're having a lottery, and then we'll cancel it if we don't need it. You can go to the next slide. The addition of our 3 pre-K classrooms, we're going to have 2 at Wayside and 1 at OTES. We're also going to add an additional preschool instructional coach, but the focus of that coach is going to be on our ESL students, because we really feel like we need to have a greater impact with our ESL students. MLs now. I have to get used to that. MLs. They keep changing the names of everything. So we're also going to try to add a board certified behavior analyst, which will be designated strictly for pre-K, which will help with some of the pre-K behaviors that we're seeing and provide the teachers with some consultation and support. And we would like to add a supervisor of pre-K. That's what we would like to do once our budget is due in March. And once we look at the money and make sure that we can do all of that, then we'll finalize that. But this is our plan. This is what we would like to do. You can move to the next slide. Some of our additional goals that we've written into the plan are to continue professional development, improve our outdoor playground spaces with the money that we get in the grant, continue to engage our parents through our CPIS, and continue to solicit parent and community input through our surveys. Our feedback surveys. Yes, you can go to the next slide. Does anybody have any questions?
Natalie.
Mr. Weinstein.
Nice presentation, thanks. So I was kind of curious. So I can't remember how this process goes. We're applying for something that's not guaranteed, correct?
Well, we're in the grant cycle where we're in a 6-year grant cycle. So we will likely receive this money. I mean, of course, there's no promises of anything, but because we're in the 6-year cycle, they continue to bring districts on into a 6-year cycle. So I think we're in year 5 of our 6-year cycle, I believe.
Okay, so that's
It's pretty
okay.
guaranteed.
Okay, great.
I mean, it's not something that they're just going to pull from districts who are providing this
But I didn't
program.
know the expansion part was kind of part of
The expansion is part of it. So they expect you to expand each and every year until you meet your universe.
Great.
So we're hoping that this is our last expansion.
Okay, super,
Mhm.
super.
Yeah. Oh,
Ms. Hayes?
Thank you for this great report. We've had problems in the past over the bathrooms in some of the pre-K rooms. So do we anticipate any construction or moving around if we're
We
adding?
do anticipate a little construction that will be paid for through the grant. I believe, I have to think about the classrooms, but I believe that the classrooms that we're adding have bathrooms. There might be one that is across the hall, but I believe that, Kelly, I think that, I
Yeah,
can't remember.
Bathrooms are okay, but
Yeah.
there are some space issues to meet the state requirement of space. There will have to be some minor
Mhm.
facility readjustments.
And
This is- Go ahead, Ms. Hayes.
sorry, just second question. It's hard, BCBA is like a hard position to fill in general. So you're saying there's a pre-K BCBA, like designation? What's the universe of that?
Well,
Won't that be hard?
it's the same
Oh.
certification. We'll
Okay.
look for somebody with pre-K experience. But the general practice of BCBA is applicable to all
Okay.
ages. So
Okay.
it's not
So it's
a
mandatory.
specific,
Okay.
it's not a specific certification. No.
Okay, that's all I have.
We've had some very good candidates. We just hired one this year and we did have a good candidate pool.
Great.
Mrs. McGovern?
So correct me if I'm wrong, but last year we combined 3 and 4s, right? Like they're not.
Mhm.
ups. So I guess my question is, do you think that that's been a positive, having the 3s and 4s in one room together? And also, is that what's been able to enable us to expand faster? Does it have anything to do with that?
I don't think it's been, I think it's been easier to place students. So like we don't have spaces sitting open because we're waiting for somebody who's 3 or somebody who's 4. We can place a 3 or a 4-year-old in any class, which makes it easier in general. Overwhelmingly, the response has been little to none issue, but and mainly positive from the teachers and the parents in general.
People apply, they can still apply as a 4-year-old next year.
Yes, they can. That will open up yes. They did apply as 4-year-olds last year as well. And we were able to get through our entire waiting list this year, with the exception of 2 people who are waiting for a spot at a particular school. But if they were open to being at a different school, we would have already placed them.
Thank you. Mr. McCarthy?
Thank you so much for the way that you compiled the data to show the impact that we're having on our students and kind of the return on investment of
Mhm.
having a pre-K program. I thought that that was very well done. Just to make sure I really understand, so when we claim this universe number, we don't have any legitimate data to back it up. We're just making a big assumption.
No, we do have data to back it up.
You do?
Yes, I used for the purpose of this presentation, because I don't have it this year. I don't know what year they take the number from. So I don't know if they take it from, are they 2 years behind, like with all of the reporting for their universe number? I think last year our universe number was 368 or something like that. But I'm doubling the first grade number for this year. They double the first grade number, but I'm not sure which year they do it and what time of year they do it from. So we'll get that number, the exact number that the DOE is telling us it is, when we get our budget. It's in the budget. They give you your preschool universe number. Like I said, it's going to be right around that number, but it is an actual data number. I'm not sure exactly where they get it from.
There is a formula that they
There's a
use to
formula that they
calculate
use to
our
calculate it.
universe.
Right, but as you know, enrollment changes on a daily basis.
Right.
So I'm not sure what point in the year they take it from or what year they take it from.
And you haven't found that it's like massively inaccurate?
No, absolutely not. No.
The other, so in considering our percentage of the universe served, Ocelero students count in that percentage.
Yes, they do.
of Universe served,
They do.
okay, and that's we are required by the grant to utilize Ocelero?
So right now we're strongly encouraged, but they're saying in the new guidelines that are coming out that it's going to eventually be a requirement. So there's no point in us not having Ocelero, and it actually does allow us to place 30 more students because we are running out of space very quickly. So that's not a bad thing for us to have that space. This year, when students didn't get in through the lottery, Ocelero very quickly filled up. So that was good because our students are actually getting the same high quality program at Ocelero. It's just off site. We would prefer to have them here. I just wish that we had more classroom space available. Nobody likes when I come over and start looking in their classrooms. They all get a little, what is she doing here? Why is she measuring my room? Yeah. So yeah, it's not, we're running out of space.
My last question,
Mhm.
Of all the things mentioned tonight, do we have any idea or anticipate what would likely be funded just by the grant, and if any of it would need to come out of just our budget? I know you mentioned
Everything that's listed in this presentation would come out of the grant.
would come out of the grant,
Mhm.
but we anticipate that there would be some collateral.
Well, we have to contribute for our special education students.
Okay,
So any student who is placed in the program, in an inclusion program, that student is funded through special education funds. The other students are funded through general education funds through the grant. So that's why there is there's a part that we contribute, the district, for our special education students.
and I just want to say thank you so much for all your hard work on this. I've been a huge proponent of this and us reaching this, because if we reach a no lottery point, that's hitting the lottery for every parent.
I'm very hopeful,
Appreciate it.
very
Good job.
hopeful. Thank you.
Mrs. Parliament?
Yes, I agree with Mr. McCarthy. This has been a dream of mine as well. So it's wonderful to see it happening. I have no doubt that we're going to hit our universe number next year, but what happens if we don't? Is there a penalty?
Oh, absolutely not. No, then we just have to continue to expand.
Okay.
So we would just have to, the following year, find more space. And I don't know where that would be, but we will have to work on it. But we'll know after we get our lottery applications. For me, we're hitting that number on paper. But if we're not giving a seat to every student in Ocean Township, we're not satisfied yet. So we want to make sure that every student has the opportunity to attend the program. So in that case, we would go back to the drawing board and try to find more space somehow, somewhere. But we'll know that after we get our lottery applications.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good. And I would expect or suspect that we're probably never gonna hit 100% of 3 and 4-year-olds, because there's still gonna be parents that still want their kids to be in maybe a half-day program or a private program or whatever.
Yes,
So,
that's why it's 90%.
yeah, and I would say while we're close I feel like we're getting as close to the number as we might be getting with that in mind of if we're not in a lottery situation, even though we're at 90%, we're sort of at 100% of, we're at a goal of
Of no,
being able
no
to have
list.
every-
Mhm. Right.
the word.
Yeah, no list.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
Sure.
If we get to the point or when we get to the point where there's no lottery, how does it determine which students then go to Acelero?
So Acelero is dependent on income. So yeah, we would not be, we don't place students at Acelero. Parents choose that. If for whatever, Acelero has a lot more to offer before care, after care. It's like a wraparound services. So some parents need those longer hours and
Okay.
choose Acelero. So it's good to have that opportunity. I'm wondering if we can place everybody if Acelero, if we don't fill those seats. I don't know. It's remains to be seen. Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mrs. Hanson. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving on. Now we have the school business administrator's report.
Nice presentation.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Just a quick update over the past week, we completed a project at Wayside, replacing cafeteria tables. Progress continues with the boiler project at the intermediate school. I believe 2 of them are up and running and the third one is in place and being set to start up. So we're in good shape there. And the Buildings and Grounds Department did a great job replacing the hot water heaters on top of the intermediate school as well. So that was great news for us to hear. Thank you.
Any questions? Go ahead.
I just have a question. Did a pipe or something break at the high school that caused some area to be freezing cold in the last 2 days? Or is it just that no, nothing?
No, there was an
So-
early morning power outage
Oh,
that
okay,
resulted in the boilers getting started a little later.
okay.
So they worked, they just needed a little time to get
Kick in.
going.
Okay. Just, you said boilers and it made me jog my memory.
Okay, we'll now move to the first of 2 public comments sections. The first section is on agenda items only. Do we have any public comments in the room tonight? Come up to the mic. Yep, you know the drill.
Sylvia, 200 Lincoln Drive, really short.
Oh, jeez.
That's a mic drop. Thank you. I appreciate it. That presentation was magnificent. That's Miss Hanson.
Yes.
And just a little perspective on that. One of my kids, he was in the special ed pre-K, and at that time, because it's a long time ago, there was only special ed pre-K. That was even before they had included what used to be termed typical kids
Mhm.
in with the special needs kids. And we served, let's see, my kids were in Wayside, and there were, I think, a total of 10 that were being served. And I'm not even sure if the other elementaries had the program. It might have been that they all went to Wayside. So to get these numbers of kids that are like, that is really magnificent. And I'm so impressed. And I know that she had gone that way. So if somebody would tell her that, I think that was like, it was really staggering, particularly for somebody like me who is like decades away from where we used to be. Incidentally, that one of my kids, he's my smart one. He ended up, he's 26 now. He graduated Johns Hopkins after learning how to actually speak here. And I fully intend on living in his basement one day. It's like, what this district did for my son is nothing that can ever be repaid. And I think Ms. Zara is June. I think she's still teaching. She taught my kid how to speak. Unbelievable.
She's retired from here, but
Is she
still
retired?
around and doing her work.
I
the work she
credit
does,
her
yeah.
for, because he can't hear, so he couldn't say things. Really magnificent. I was interested in the donation from Monmouth University. There's a social justice program. They're donating books. Is that a program that's already established? It was really fascinating. Is that a program that already exists, or is that something that's just kicking off? The fourth graders go down with picture books to the second graders?
So this summer, Monmouth University had a call out to teachers in the area who wanted to be part of their social justice academy. Our very own Mrs. Hackler did participate in that academy and then submitted a grant and won the grant. And we're accepting the award this evening, and she's going to run her project at Wayside School this year for the very first time because she was the recipient of this grant.
Congratulations. Congrats, Kathy. I remember when you got hired here. That's, these are the things that I'm really excited about. Thank you, Kelly, and for your staff and to the board for supporting these kinds of programs. That's it.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else in the room for public comment on agenda items? Ms. Conway, is there anyone in the queue?
I believe Tiffany Fisher would like to ask a question. Please hold on. Please go ahead.
Ms. Fisher, I believe you're muted.
Well, maybe she could ask a question in the second comments.
Okay,
Yeah, I think she had a question for Mrs. Hanson.
okay. Is there anyone else in the queue at this time?
No, there is not.
Okay, we will move along then to action items. 7.1 and 7.2, approval of minutes. Mr. McCarthy,
Move to approve items 7.1 and 7.2.
second.
Second.
That's a second.
Oh, you're saying, I thought you were looking for a second.
So you were looking for one also.
Thought you were fishing for a second.
Okay, take the roll, please.
Thank you. This is for item 7.1, 7.2, Dr. Beal,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
7.1, yes, 7.2, no.
thank you, Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. McGovern,
Yes.
Mrs. Parliamis.
Yes.
Mrs. Talarico,
7.1, yes, 7.2, no.
thank you. Mrs. Tortorella
Yes,
and Mr. Weinstein.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
okay. All right, personnel, Mrs. Parliamis.
Let's just hold on 8.5 at this time, okay?
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to table 8.5, and then I'd like to move 8.1 through 8.4 and 8.6 through 8.13. Do I have a second?
Thank you, Mr. McCarthy, for the second.
Yep.
Okay,
It's for all items 8.1 to 8.13, except 8.5. Dr.
Yes.
Beal,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
Yes,
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mrs. McGovern,
Yes to all. Trying to get to it. Yes to all, it's fine.
thank you. Mrs. Parliamis,
Yes.
Mrs. Talarico,
Yes to all except 8.13 recuse.
thank you. Mrs. Tortorella,
yes to all.
Mr. Weinstein.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion's carry.
Okay, financial management and resource services, Mrs. Hayes.
motion to move 9.1 to 9.6 and discussion for 9.7 to 9.10.
Second.
Okay, do we have any questions on? Do you want to do discussion first or move? Okay, so we'll vote on
Sorry, Mr.
9.1
McCarthy,
to 9.6.
Question.
Wait, we can, no.
Mr. McCarthy, go ahead.
For 9.1, what are the books that are going to be being read to the students? Do we know? that are provided by this group?
9.1
Is that not
is
the,
special, is,
Special Olympics.
oh, wrong,
I mean, 910.
910, yeah, thank you, the donation by Mount
910.
University.
No, they'll be selected by our media specialists and the students involved in the program overseen by their supervisor. But no, I don't know those titles at this point. I don't even know if the students have completed selecting their titles at this point.
So the students pick the titles.
The teacher, the media specialists together will work through that project.
Ms. Hayes?
9.3 use of facilities. There are some conflicting dates, like where two groups asked for the 5th grade gym at the middle school. So I know there's 2 gyms at the middle school, but it's for something, I believe it's from 5 to 6 PM for both events, and there is Project Extend, so they need access to a gym, I assume, right? So I'm not really sure unless they're sharing a gym.
The one group agreed to give up that 1 hour that was an overlap for those specific dates.
Okay. For what, for the dates that there are the conflict.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, do we have any other questions on 9.1 through 9.6? Alex, did you have a question?
I do for 9.8, sorry,
Okay.
so I'll wait.
All right, we'll take
Sorry.
a roll on those, please.
So this is for items 9.1 to 9.6. Dr.
Yes.
Beal,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy,
Yes,
Ms. McGovern,
Yes.
Mrs. Paralamas.
Yes.
Mrs. Talarico,
Yes.
Mrs. Tortorella,
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein.
Yes.
All items carry.
Okay, and now we'll move to discussion on 9.7 to 9.10. Do we have any questions from the board? Ms. Hayes?
I don't know if Mr. Hastings can discuss 9.8 a little bit better, or Superintendent Weldon. This is rather than us using our buses, our people and shuttling people to private schools, we're hiring MOESC to do it. Is that layman's terms?
Yes.
Okay. So is my math correct? Because the, it didn't really have a total. But if you add up all the students, it's like 600 students. So these are Ocean students, Ocean residents, right? So 600 students go to private school. And I know it's state law, we have to pay for this, but it's almost $400,000. So while I appreciate that we have to do it and stuff, I just wish sometimes in maybe the presentation of some of these documents, like the total could be down on there because the public might be interested to know that. I don't know. So that's, I guess, a comment, not a question.
Can amend that for the next meeting.
Oh, since we're voting on it for the next one. Okay.
Anything else on 9.7 to 9.10? Okay, moving on to instruction, education, and student activities. Dr. Beal,
Move to approve 10.1 through 10.3.
any questions? Mr. McCarthy?
10.1, and the
Can we have a
operation-
second, please?
Oh, second, I second as well.
Thank you.
And now I have a question. In 10.1, it refers to the operational plan as a 3-year plan in some of the writing. Do we view it that, this is just out of curiosity. This isn't, I'm not trying to make this a got you moment. Is this like, is it supposed to be referred to as a 3-year plan or? Or did I read it wrong? Also possible. Yeah, 1.1, the 3-year preschool
I'm
program
just looking at it quickly.
operational plan. I know this is a
We have to do
document,
it annually.
this is a document provided by the state,
It
right?
is.
Is there an
It is,
intent for
and
there to
we
be?
complete it. And there are many questions about just next year as well. So, but the part of the funding is your ability to sustain this type of programming. So without knowing an exact answer or exactly where you're referring to, It could be related to that we have to show our sustainability over time.
Okay. That we have to show that we can operate for up to 3 years, not that this is a 3-year pre-K program.
Correct. I can find out for sure for you. There are many questions in here that speak only to next year and mention the 24-25 school year. Do you know the passage you're referring?
What, 1.1 purpose, first sentence?
I think I would imagine that that's what it has to do with our ability to sustain it over time, but I can ask Mrs. Hanson to get us an answer for that and get that to you tomorrow.
Only if you promise it doesn't waste more than 5 minutes of your time.
Can't promise that, but
Then don't do it.
I'll do my best.
Okay, any other questions on 10.1 to 10.3, Ms. Hayes?
10.3 school field trips. I know the list isn't public, but all the 8th grade trips to the high school, which I think is awesome. Did we ever have that before? And maybe I just didn't notice because I only have an 8th grader this year.
We haven't had it in this capacity for this specific master's class type program, but we have had quite a bit of transitional programs for our 8th graders for exposure to our Spartan schools. But this is enhanced for sure this year.
So I assume we'll, 8th grade parents will get a letter sent home saying if your kid is interested in VPA or a school of business, they're going to be going to the high school for 4 hours on X day or whatever it is.
The students involved in the trips and invited to the trips through their classes that they're taking will get a class trip.
Oh, the
form.
whole class, that they're taking?
Students are invited based on programming
Oh, okay, that's cool. All right,
that they're taking now. This is an instructional program, not necessarily an orientation program.
sure.
But we do orientation
Yeah.
programs like that, and we always have, and that will be coming throughout the year.
When those happen, or after they happen, will we get like a wrap up?
We have never, we have not
hundred and
really,
eighty-seven students went to, these things, or,
we have not provided a wrap up before for the Board of Ed. Is that what you mean? A wrap up for the Board of Education?
I guess it just seems really like a novel idea, and it seems,
There's
Full-
usually a lot of
fully
social
expand.
media coverage of it and posts
seen
of while the activity's taking
Awesome.
place.
okay, cool,
Not aware of a wrap up though
okay.
from any other time.
Okay, you can take the roll on
10.1 through 10.3, Dr. Beal,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
Yes,
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. McGovern,
Yes.
Mrs. Parliamus.
Yes.
Mr. Talarico,
Yes.
Mrs. Tortorella,
yes.
Mr. Weinstein,
Yes.
items carry.
Okay, section 11 policy, Mr. McCarthy.
Put up 11.1 and 11.2 for discussion. This is the first reading of these sets of policies.
I have a second, please.
Second,
Any questions?
I have a few, sorry.
Go ahead, Ms. Hayes.
4214, that's the staff member one. Is there a comparable one for teachers? No, right? And is there a reason why this is coming up?
So section 11.2 is for policies that we're continuing to review.
Mhm.
So these were missing from our library of policies. So 4214 is just in that category of support staff. Yes, you're correct. There is no comparable one in the 3000s for the teacher category.
So just to clarify, 11.1 going forward will be policies that Strauss has published changes to that we have to make. And then 11.2 will be policies that we have identified as needing to change and or are missing entirely. Is that
Correct.
correct?
Right. Right, so the last few meetings, the agenda's been split up that way. 11.1 has been anything current that Strauss Esme is putting out now in alerts. The rest has been part of that long-term Board of Education plan for us to update the 100 or so policies that were either less, more out of date than Strauss Esme's version or missing altogether. We're trying to do the simplest ones first, which are last time around was ones that were a citation change only. So it was a minor change, not much difference in the context of the policy. Now we're doing the ones that were missing and we're putting those up. They did not exist before, in our policy guide. And then we will focus in on student and staff policies that need to be revised, but those will have changes. So those will require a deeper read because we'll be changing text.
I mean, I'd be curious to hear what my colleagues on the board think of 4214. I think a lot of parents like to give small gestures to teachers and staff and, if your kid has a bus aid every day and at the end of the school, you want to give them a Dunkin' Donuts card, is this basically saying you can't do that?
No,
No,
this
they-
is, sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you.
It's not saying that because I asked
Okay.
the same question.
Yeah, because it reads that way.
When I reread it again, I saw Mr. Hastings' point. Go ahead, Mr. Hastings.
Go ahead, sorry.
So it sort of addresses 2 points. One is that there shouldn't be an exchange of gifts for favors, obviously. But it does, the last sentence of the policy says that staff can receive gifts of nominal value. So that would be considered nominal value.
But
Typically
cannot
up to $50 or so is,
cannot
generally
accept gifts
considered.
as favors in exchange for favors. That's the point of the policy.
Okay.
I mean, it was missing. It may have been missing for this very reason with this very discussion you're having now. So it is the right of the board to decide to keep it off, but
I
we
mean-
present it to you because it was missing. And it was
we-
part of that 106 policies that
Do
we
we need that?
highlighted concern around.
My question is, do we need this? Seems,
There is.
yeah, there is.
Do we need, I don't necessarily agree or disagree, I'm just posing the question, do we need to define nominal? Because that can be very.
I think I would find
I
that.
would agree with that as well. If you look at any government requirements for nominal, there's usually a money value that is associated with it. And then also states that the gift cannot be equated to the fair market value that exceeds that price. So if we,
Yeah.
you could also make the argument, I don't have an opinion either way about this, but you could also make the argument that this prevents individuals who cannot afford to give vastly nominal gifts from feeling as though they are shortcoming in doing so.
Mhm.
I think that's something that's important to consider when the time comes. Because you're just giving a Dunkin' Donuts gift card and somebody else hands over a Louis Vuitton, that's different environment. So
Natalie,
the teachers are all wondering where their Louis Vuittons are.
Natalie?
so if you look
Mr.
at
Weinstein,
the.
go ahead.
Yeah,
third
my,
last
my other,
paragraph,
my other comment would be that it's probably in aggregate over a period of time. Because it can't be where every week you're giving somebody something of $30 and next thing you know, it becomes more the norm. It has to be probably something in aggregate over the school year. I mean, the part I think I'm pretty confident that a teacher knows when they're getting something that's not appropriate. Okay, so I'm a little skeptical about adding a lot of that because at the end of the day, I think all the professionals know when, if they get a new set of golf clubs and it's probably not a good idea, right? So, so that's the only thing I would probably just add a comment on.
Okay, Mrs. Tellerico.
Can I just ask, where did we get this from? Because there is a 3214. It's the same exact as this.
This one was missing.
correct.
This
For support.
4214 was missing.
Okay, but it is the same. It's just teaching staff, support staff, but we do have one. Thank you.
The one you got was from Strauss, yes.
I was just gonna say that defining something like nominal is also. The value of what nominal is also going to open the can of worms of having to police that. And I don't know that any of like Mr. Weinstein said, I think that our teachers would know if they walk outside and they have, a Louis Vuitton or a brand new car from a parent that it's inappropriate, they would love it, but it's inappropriate, and I'm sure that there would be conversation about it. I would think so. But I think to have somebody have to say, what did you get this year at your end of the year gifts? And, you know, when you have, you know, what did you get and how was it? To have somebody actually look into that is, in my opinion, an impossible feat for who would even do it and how much it would get done and who decides what's, you know, this and that. So I would not put personally, I would not put a value in nominal. Under nominal. I think the policy defines what it is. If you're being given gifts so that maybe a grade changes or anything like that, it's unethical, and a teacher would bring that to the attention of their superiors, I would hope, and I would think, knowing our staff. So I think personally, I think it reads fine the way it is. It is a discussion we can discuss again next week too.
Mr. McCarthy?
What's your opinion of the policy, Mrs. Weldon?
I
And
do
how do
want-
you know, with all the things that we brought up, being putting forward something nominal, how will the TOEA respond to this? How will you enforce this in our district, right? Because the worst thing we can do is try to put forward a rule that we can't enforce. I think that mitigates power that an institution has. So what is your opinion of this?
I certainly don't want to police it, and I was alarmed when I first read it that I thought it could cause issues, but as Mrs. Tellerico did point out, we do have one for staff already. This is for support staff. It hasn't seemed to be an issue up till now. I don't anticipate it will be one in the future, but you know, I think there were some good points about how people may feel. I don't think we have an overwhelming problem of over gift giving in our district. I don't. I'm not certain if we have a feeling amongst parents of not being able to give what others are able to give, and certainly that concerns me. I'm not certain if we have that or not.
Okay, so did you have another comment? Ms.
Well, I mean, based on that, what would you like to do? What would be your recommendation?
I think that we've had the staff policy, the teaching staff members policy. I don't see the harm in approving this missing policy. I'm not certain why it was missing in the first place.
Okay.
I don't see a reason to have one and not the other. Certainly, if we were going to approve it, it would raise the question as to whether or not we should do away with the other one.
Okay, and this is just the first reading, so if there's any other discussion, it can continue next week. Any other questions or comments on policy this evening, Ms. Hayes?
I guess this is a point of inquiry for the one about the school foods. 8,500, how close are we to a 50% free and reduced lunch school? Is OTS, have they met that yet?
I don't believe so.
I don't have those numbers
Yeah.
available right now.
Because from this policy, the way I understand it is once we hit 50%, we have to require food in the summer, like we have to be our own summer food location. So if I thought we were in the 40s, at least at that school. Is there a way to find that out? Because if that happens this year, does that mean we have to scramble for the summer to become a food site? You know what I mean? If we're at 41% and we don't think it'll ever happen for a couple of years, that's one thing. But if we are like at 46%, and as Dow keeps, getting
Yeah.
every month, there's 5 more kids or so at Dow. So
Yeah, we keep a close eye on that through our Title I programming. That's usually where we get that percentage. So I can speak to Dr. Morgan again about that. She maintains some of those numbers, but I don't think, I know we're not there yet because it would have impacted our application.
okay.
As you said, it could, with enrollments, fluctuation in enrollments, it's always possible. But we'll keep a close eye on that.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? All right, moving on. Is there any old business from the board? Mrs. Montgomery?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that last week we had our first wellness committee meeting for this year. I was the representative from the board. And the good thing, or one of the things about the wellness committee this year is that it's moving into more talking about the grants that we're applying for, grants that are out there, what we can do with them, how they're being implemented into the schools, and less about what's going on in the day-to-day from the schools. So that's going on. One of the things just that we talked about last year that is being implemented, the Lifelines program, which I know we talked about last year. All the training has been done. But nothing's really started until it'll now start right now it'll probably started this week during the health, because there's been no health classes until marking period 3 in the high school. So that those lessons will be implemented now. Ms. Hanson is going to come at a future meeting and give us a lot of the input that we found on or a lot of the things we discussed at the meeting. So I feel that waiting for her to present to the board is better than me saying it. So she'll be here in a couple. Miss Weldon's going to get with her about a date, and I would assume probably more in the new year based on other things she has coming up for us. So that was it.
Okay, any other old business from the board? Mr. McCarthy?
So in our October 17th meeting, I believe that we had one of the largest showings that I've seen in my short tenure as a board member of our teachers union dressed in all black. We also had some very serious allegations made by a member of our staff, Cipriano Apicelli, against board member Alex Hayes. And due to the time in our meeting when these allegations took place, many of us were forced to sit here silently and to listen to these allegations. Upon hearing them, I was very upset to see that a single member of this board could reflect so poorly upon this district and our Board of Education, which is why I cannot in good conscience remain silent about this matter. I should note that in my opinion, these are merely allegations without evidence, which is why I did request and review the paperwork and evidence that Mr. Apicelli claimed to have to back up these claims. And for the record, I'm not a judge, I'm not a jury, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a member of the State Board of Ethics, okay? But upon reviewing this evidence, I do move that the Township of Goshen Board of Education censures board member Alex Hayes for these actions by adopting the following resolution. Whereas NJSA 18A:12-21, the School Ethics Act, is intended to ensure that the conduct of school officials holds the confidence and respect of the people. Whereas NJSA 18A:12-24.1, Code of Ethics Section E, requires board members to, quote, recognize that authority rests with the Board of Education and will make no personal promises nor take any private action that may compromise the board. And Section I requires board members to, quote, support and protect school personnel in the proper performance of their duties. Be it resolved that the allegations by the TOEA and staff member Cipriano Apicelli against board member Alex Hayes in the October 17th regular meeting reflect unilateral action taken independently and are not condoned by the Township of Goshen Board of Education. Furthermore, the Township of Goshen Board of Education finds these actions unbecoming of a board member, citing the aforementioned state codes. Finally, the Township of Goshen Board of Education fully supports our district's administration, staff, and students in carrying out their responsibilities in a legal, ethical, and moral manner that carries on our district's proud tradition of academic excellence and scholastic achievement. Separate of this resolution, I just want to personally state, regardless of its outcome, to Mr. Apicelli that I'm very sorry for what you and your family have endured during this time. I believe you to be an integral member of the Big Red family, and your personal actions and dedication have helped countless members of our baseball and wrestling teams, and consequentially the entire student community. I'm grateful to have you as a member of our staff, and I look forward to many more years of you working in this district. Do I have a second?
A second. And I just want to say thank you for the comments, John. I want to say ditto.
Mrs. Palamas? You know, Mr. McCarthy, I'm having a really hard time wrapping my head around this whole thing myself. And I'm not one to say a lot, but I'm really having trouble with this. So I do agree with you. And I too apologize to Mr. Apicelli and his family for what he's going through. So I definitely agree.
John, I have a question. You said, if I heard you correctly, you said that you received or you got a copy of some documentation.
I requested the evidence that he referred to in the allegations that he made in the meeting.
So would it not be prudent for the rest of the board to read that information before we vote on this?
Absolutely.
Mrs. Parlamas?
The only thing I will say is I do remember Mr. Apicelli that evening, correct me if I'm wrong, saying that any one of us could ask him for the information. And I guess Mr. McCarthy took him up on that.
Right, but I'm saying if we're being asked to vote on it and I didn't ask for it because I didn't know we were voting on it, so.
Well, the only thing I can say is everyone had the opportunity to read it.
Mr. Weinstein?
Yeah, and I guess for me at least, the outline and all the way that he went through and tied different things together was incredibly black and white to me. So I felt like it had a lot of, it reminded me of a lot of things that we were having discussions around. It reminded me of a lot of emails that were going around. It reminded me of a lot of things that happened in these meetings that was tying it all together for me. So I felt after that meeting, I felt like it wasn't appropriate at that meeting, I think, to make comment, but it certainly, when I left that meeting, I felt incredibly sorry that he was going through that and that he endured that. He's been enduring that for some time. So I thought the evidence was that he laid out was incredibly compelling. And by the way, we're not acting a judge. We're trying to just basically state what we believe we want to show as our commitment to when somebody we feel is being treated not well. We want to make sure that as a board, we get committed behind that. So the rest of the school district staff realizes we trust them and we want to safeguard their privacy.
Okay, thank you. Ms. McGovern?
I didn't know what, I guess my question is, because I've never heard this before, like, what does a censure do?
It's a public statement that is as good as the paper it is written on, that demonstrates that this is not an approved board action. It does not go any further than this board. And that's it.
I understand what you're saying as far as possibly wanting to see the evidence. I think that as Mr. Apicelli went through them, I was very disheartened, very taken aback, very upset for the love that many of us have for this district and for the people that work here every day and the people that want the best things for this district and for our staff. And I think also, as to what Mr. Weinstein said, we couldn't talk about it then. I don't even know if I would have, I don't have the words now, let alone do I think I would have had the words that night. I went home that night, didn't sleep, was very upset, had heard some things. When I heard of what Mr. Apicelli was, what some of the things that I had just heard from going around, I didn't realize that the extent of his perception of maybe what was happening was so deep. And I remember conversations and some of the things that were brought up about specific meetings. I remember the conversation around it because I know I was a part of it. And I value Mr. Apicelli. I thought he spoke so well. I almost wish he could be a public speaking teacher in our district, because I think that the way he went through it, in my opinion, as emotionless as you possibly could when feeling attacked, your family is being attacked. And so while I didn't know what a censure was until 5 minutes ago or 5 seconds ago, a minute ago, I would agree that it's something that I could support based on not supporting the actions of Ms. Hayes.
Ms. Hillary, go ahead.
Thank you. I value all the staff in our district. I mean, I want to put that out there first and foremost. But if someone believes that there's a violation of a code of ethics for a board member, it needs to be presented in the proper form. A board meeting and board members here don't have the authority to censor another board member.
I have legal counsel from the Board of Ed attorney that says that we are.
How'd you go to the Board of Ed attorney?
Request permission,
Um,
in accordance with policy.
mhm.
And you brought all the documentation to this attorney and he investigated it?
No, and that's why I didn't claim that there was any judge, jury, or member of the State Board of Ethics making this claim.
No. You're right, you're not on the State Board of Ethics. It's not the proper forum, in my opinion.
Madam President, we have a motion on the floor. We're just gonna debate outside of normal recognition. I'd ask that we put this to a vote.
Well, I do want to just address what Mrs. Tellerico said, because I think it's two separate things. There's an ethics complaint that was filed, which is separate. You're not claiming an ethics violation. You're claiming that, or the motion on the table is
To adopt a resolution.
to adopt a
censure
resolution that the board, that this body does not support the some we know, to Mrs. McGovern's point, we know that some of the things that Mr. Appicelli spoke about did take place because we were all here for it. And the rest of it, you're saying that we don't support the allegations
Right,
brought to the board. And that's what you're asking for a vote on the resolution that you read.
yes.
Okay? Mr. Hastings, we'll take the vote.
I have a point of
Sorry,
inquiry.
Ms. Hayes, go ahead.
I'm just curious how we're doing this without our attorney present.
I don't think that we need an attorney present. Any board member can bring up any item for a motion at any time. You've done it yourself numerous times. Mr. Hastings,
I didn't get a chance to speak.
Okay. Dr. Beal, go ahead.
I thought that we were advised by our attorney not to talk about pending legal matters, and it sounds like there's some legal matters involving Mrs. Hayes.
We're not, again, we're not talking about legal matters. Mr. McCarthy made a resolution and that's what we're voting on.
And does our board attorney know about it?
Yes,
Okay. And do you have anything from the board attorney regarding it?
just telling you that there was a conversation between you and I. You have to take me on my word.
Can you share more, like his
I called him
comments?
up and
or-
asked him what the process is for censuring a board member. And the exact question that I received from Ms. McGovern is what he said. And I went through that with him. It's as good as the piece of paper that it's written on, but it is a great way to demonstrate that the board does not approve of actions taken by a member.
Those were his words.
That's what I remember the conversation to say, yes.
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Mr. White.
Yeah, so what we're voting on is whether we think, as a board, we want to, support the distress that that employee felt when he was talking with us, and how he went through and kind of, systematically talked through how these different events and how they all tied together. So if somebody does not believe in what he was saying, you can certainly vote not to censor and not to agree with John's motion. If you feel like you agree with what he was saying, or not agree with him, but believe what he was saying, then you have the right to vote for that. It's a pretty clear-cut kind of thing. I think, as a board, we're making a statement either way. So one statement is that we're believing him and having empathy for what he went through. The other is we don't believe him, and we don't think it warranted to that level where we should have to do something like this. So it's pretty clear cut, at least in my opinion.
Any other comments, Mrs. Tellerico? Go ahead.
We can have empathy, but I would still like to review the documentation before I vote.
Well, I guess the same answer goes to you that was given to me, that we were told we could do that a week ago or a month ago at this point.
We weren't aware of this vote till 2 minutes ago.
Dr. Beal, did you have your hand up?
Yes, so is the vote whether or not I believe what he says? Is
Vote
that,
to adopt the
He votes to adopt the resolution. He gave you the reasons why he's asking for the resolution. Whether you agree with him, whether you agree with what John said is your choice.
no, you just mentioned it's whether or not I believe what he said, meaning Mr.
Meaning
Appicelli.
that it warrants to that level, that what he said warrants for us at this level to make that motion. If you don't believe it, if you don't believe what he said warrants us to rise to this level, then you just vote no. If you do believe it, then you vote yes.
Any other comments or questions? Ms. Hayes?
I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a minute to find my comment from my attorney. Because nobody's asked me for any evidence, but I'd just like to say, as mentioned in the coaster, that I've always supported our incredible Ocean teachers and staff. So to hear disparaging and false allegations leveled against me is deeply dismaying, and I believe it was all an attempt to influence the school board election a week ago. I did not author the ethics complaint filed against Jeffrey Weinstein and Irene Gilman, and it would be improper for me to comment on the substance of that investigation at all, as it is a pending legal investigation before the State School Ethics Commission, and that would undermine the state's mandated confidentiality of that process. Now, as for the unfounded and defamatory accusations, I have never targeted nor harassed any Ocean teacher. I remain committed to our mission of supporting all students, teachers, and staff. I trust that Ocean residents who know me and know who I fight for, why I fight for it, they know that I have a longstanding, unwavering commitment to fostering the important values of excellence, equity, and integrity of our schools. It's unfortunate that my asking so many questions over 3 years has led to where we are right now.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Hastings?
This is to adopt the resolution presented by Mr. McCarthy. Dr. Beal,
I'm going to abstain until I hear from the attorney myself.
Ms. Hayes,
I like that. I'm going to abstain until I hear from the attorney also, as it is about me.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. McGovern,
Yes.
Ms. Paralamas.
Yes.
Ms. Talarico,
I will also abstain till I can review the documentation, and speak to the attorney myself.
Ms. Tortorella,
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, call the room to order, and is there any other old business this evening from the board? Ms. Hayes?
We're still on old, we haven't gotten to new yet, correct? I was wondering, since you all probably at the school board meeting, you guys probably all saw the School Leader magazine. In it, where it talks about recent school ethics decisions, and it rather lengthily goes over what is it called? Advisory Opinion 0523 about conflicted school board presidents, assigning committees and such. I'm wondering for probably maybe, I think this is gonna be the 4th time I've asked this, if this board is going to abide by advisory opinion. So I'd like to make a motion right now. That as a board, when we seek an advisory opinion from the State School Ethics Commission, that we abide by it. Do I have a second?
Second,
I'm sorry, can you clarify? I don't understand what the motion is.
When this board when any member of this board seeks an advisory opinion from the State School Ethics Commission, and when we have received the Ethics Commission's response, it is to be followed.
Mr. Weinstein.
Well, the problem with the advisory opinions is sometimes they're pretty nebulous and they cite prior rulings. So in a number of the times when they cite prior rulings, they're actually in conflict with those opinions. So I think the thing that we want to always do and rely on is our own counsel and our own counsel's interpretation of what can be adopted and what shouldn't be adopted. So I'm perfectly comfortable in agreeing to something like that, as long as we say that it's under the advisement of our own counsel of what should be adopted or not adopted.
Mr. McCarthy.
This is more of a question, but I thought that we received the advice even from the individuals that provide this, these advisory opinions, that these opinions can,
Yes.
on the same question, can change daily. Is that incorrect?
Yeah.
If you get a new one that's like, that says the opposite, yeah, it could change the next day if you get another advisory opinion.
But most of them also have you rely on your own counsel to interpret what you should be doing too.
Well, we've had counsel for months. And it's been stated that we weren't going to abide by it. So I believe there's a motion on the floor.
I think I have the floor right now, actually. So I was commented on and I was interrupted as a point of procedure. So I would not support this motion basis the fact that this changes so frequently, and that we can receive from the same body varying opinions. There's a reason that we hire the counsel that we do. I defer to them, and then in the absence of agreement with their judgment, I make my own judgment at my own peril. I don't believe it's a smart move to put forward. I appreciate the laughter in the audience at that comment. I don't believe it's a smart move personally to put such a restrictive policy in place on behalf of the Board of Education. So I don't believe that I would support this motion when it comes to a vote.
Mr. Weinstein.
Yeah, my other recommendation is that we have a new board joining in January, and we should probably take it up there. And we have new board members that are going to be dealing with it for the rest of the year.
Ms. Hayes.
2 comments to that. We renewed a superintendent in a lame duck session and didn't have a problem doing that. My second comment is not the current superintendent, in case that seemed implied. This was 3 years ago. So the argument of we are lame duck right now really shouldn't have any impact, because actually that really only applies to superintendent hiring. And yes, can any advisory opinion change the next day? The one I am talking about, 0523, which is in here, which is all about our town, hadn't been discussed or changed since 2001. So is it changed? Sure. But at 22 years later.
Ms. McGovern.
There's a motion on the floor that we need to vote on. I just say we're not going to agree on it. So I think we just take the vote and be done with it.
Good plan.
Okay, go ahead.
Motion is to abide by advisory opinions requested by the board. Dr. Beal,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
No.
Mrs. McGovern,
No.
Mrs. Parliamis.
No.
Mrs. Talarico,
Yes.
Mrs. Tortorella,
No.
Mr. Weinstein.
No,
Motion fails.
Is there any other old business from the board this evening? Ms. Talarico, go ahead.
This is old business. I have a concern that this coming January, there is a potential for a board president or vice president to again be a conflicted member. So to avoid any future issues, the board bylaw, the president duties 0171 still has not been reviewed or updated. This is going on through almost 3 years now. And my concern is that it really should be updated to avoid any future problems. So my recommendation would be that the policy committee could meet before the next meeting and determine the suggested update to present to the full board by the next meeting. And I'm making a motion for that.
Second.
So I have a comment on that. You want us to we have a huge legal case going on right now, or an ethics case going on right now, based on so-called, based on allegations of people voting when they were conflicted. And you just voted yes, that we should only follow advisory opinions, but now you're making a motion that we should just proceed with this without waiting to see the outcome of this case? You don't want us to wait for the outcome of the ethics complaint that you filed
This is
before we solidify this. but you-
bylaw. This is a bylaw I'm talking about.
Yeah, I understand that.
But
So you want us to put that into the bylaws without waiting.
no, I'm talking about updating the president and vice president responsibilities, the duties that we were supposed to do in 2021.
We haven't had an issue with conflicted members in many, many years until your ethics complaint. So
We updated
I
all the
don't-
bylaws
I don't believe we should be
except
voting
for
on this.
those two.
Can you let me finish? I didn't interrupt you. We should be waiting until this ethics complaint is settled before we try to put anything related to this into the bylaws regarding conflicted members.
That's
Mr.
not what
McCarthy,
the motion is.
Mr. McCarthy, did you have your hand up?
I just also believe that I remember that the reason that this didn't get changed was because the board couldn't come to an agreement
Mm-hmm.
on bringing forward a resolution. So this repetitive claiming that the board.
Yep.
That this is the only one unchanged, it's because we played this game where back and forth, we requested advisory opinions, there were conflicting opinions, we received conflicting opinions from legal counsel, which goes to why I voted against the previous resolution. So I just, for my seeing of the events as they have unfolded, I do not believe that it is an accurate characterization of what has happened, that this is the only bylaw to remain unchanged. It's the reason it is the only bylaw to remain unchanged is because we cannot come to a conclusion on something to change it to that would be acceptable to the entire board. Although I would argue that it is more of a concession because technically I would venture to guess that this board could gain a majority to say no to this. But instead, we're choosing to protect this board, to protect this town, and to wait until we see what the outcomes of an ethics complaint are before making a final decision because of all of the shifting and moving legal opinions that we've received from multiple attorneys. So I just wanted to make that comment. And again, I don't see a need to change this now. It worked for years and it's not, I don't think it's something that I would support.
Thank you for articulating what I was trying to say. Mrs. McGovern.
I would just add too, that if we're talking about president and vice president duties, that although Ms. Hayes would like to say that we don't want to do things or put things off because of a lame duck board, then maybe we've talked about, doing board retreats at some point. Maybe we do it earlier in the year and we talk about it at that point when it makes more sense to talk about what the duties are of those bodies.
I believe there's a motion on the floor, Mr. Hastings.
Mr. Talarico, could you, I have a motion to review bylaw, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I have one more thing to say. So you're correct that last year we did discuss about the advice or the president's duties, and then it was requested that there be an advisory opinion, and then whatever the advisory opinion was, that we would follow that. But that has not been the case. And that's why there's a motion, I'm making the motion.
Just as
I
a
don't
point
wish
of
to be
procedure, the
updated.
chair of this board, as a point of procedure, the chair of this board is called for a vote. It was not supposed to return back to debate. We were supposed to go for the vote, just as a point of procedure.
And before we do that, I just want to say that keep my mouth shut for the rest of my life, Mr. Hastings.
Mr. Talarico, could you provide the bylaw number for me again, please?
It's 0171,
0171. So the motion is to review bylaw 0171 for the next meeting.
correct. Thank you.
Dr. Beal,
No.
Ms. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
But no,
Ms. McGovern,
No.
Mrs. Parlamas,
No.
Mrs. Talarico,
Yes,
Mrs. Tortorella,
No,
Mr. Weinstein,
No,
motion fails.
again, is there any other old business for the board? Ms. Hayes.
Ms. Weldon, was there any movement on the access at TOIS, the high school and possibly other buildings for cellular service and Wi-Fi? Like, has there been any movement on that? It's
Yeah,
been a
so-
month since we last met.
Mr. Wines, sorry. Looking at Mr. Weinstein on the screen. Mr. Hastings did speak to a number of vendors while we were at the convention 2 weeks or so ago, and we conferred on some of the options. I'll let him share a little bit about what we've discovered. I think this will come down to money and what we think is best to go through. I think it will be something that we'll have to go through the budgeting process and see, where we prioritize it, but can you share a little bit about what you?
So we did talk to several vendors in addition to our own technology folks to see if there were differing opinions on what the approach could be to resolve that issue. We are looking at basically 3 options. One is a passive, one is an active distributed antenna system. The active one is very expensive, upwards of $300,000 per building, 300,000, for example, at the TOIS, based on its square footage. The passive system is similar in that it would just boost signals from the outside to the interior of the building. That cost is estimated about anywhere from 100 to 200,000 for TOIS. So again, those numbers are a bit prohibitive on the face. We talked about a guest network. The guest network does present an option, but there are problems associated with that as well in terms of folks who are on that network could infect each other with their devices if they have malware, those sorts of things on their devices. And then 2, we'd have to look at the traffic that it would generate on our network, because although so we'd have to look at that as well to see if that was a viable option. I sort of look at this as the money as one issue, and then 2, sort of the academic or teachers issue in terms of whether or not we feel it's a good idea for students to be able to use their cell phones within the school building with texting and those sorts of things. So. And we have a new network manager coming on in a week, so we'll certainly discuss it with him as well.
And when you do say guest network, you mean it could be something as simple as when we had tech night at TOIS, we could put out a guest password for that night only? Like, or are you meaning there's a possibility of a guest network every single day?
Yeah, so a guest network in that specific person would have a password to a system that's excluded or sort of separated from our regular network. So anything that happens.
Sorry, go ahead. Personal devices. It would be a separate network for personal devices to access. But then we would have to manage that as well and talk about the implications of that.
Okay. Thank you for the update.
Any other old business? Moving on, any new business? Mr. McCarthy.
We had the security meeting for the district this week. Unfortunately, a lot of this information is it needs to be kept close to the chest and not discussed at public meeting due to the fact that there are security concerns for our students with it. I will say that I'm extremely encouraged by the steps that our administration and our town are taking. So to be clear, we have our police chief is present at these meetings. Mr. Rue, our emergency management individual who's responsible for that for the town, is present at these meetings. We have representation from every school at these meetings. We have security liaisons from the staff at every school on top of the administration at that school that's present at these meetings. There's great work being done by our administration to ensure that the most precious asset we have is extremely secure in this district. I'm extremely confident in that. I'm very proud of it. I'm happy to discuss any particulars with board members offline out of public session. I will say that some of our success has been in the drills that are being done and in the procedures and systems that we are implementing to keep our students safe. When you hear the metrics that are being reported and the things that are being shared, they're extremely encouraging. I would just like our parents to be aware of that, and our board members to be aware of that.
Mr. Weinstein.
How often do you have that meeting, John?
Twice a year.
Oh, okay.
So we'll have another one in the spring scheduled tentatively for March. We'll do it again.
So maybe after the first of the year in executive session, you can give us all a little.
I would love to
synopsis.
do that.
Great.
Yeah, I would love to do that.
Ms. Hayes?
Just in response to that comment, we previously, I thought it was an actual vote that there would be typed up minutes from the safety meetings and that we would get it in exec. I realize what Mr. Weinstein just said as of the first of the year, but
Is that a fact?
can that be
Wait,
done
wait,
for
is that a
the?
fact?
I'm not positive either, but that may be my mistake and maybe I didn't know that I was supposed to do that, but I certainly can.
I don't
Can
think,
do
no,
that.
I thought it was like when Denise and you were talking about it and you guys were like, we'll write something up just for the board in exec to read.
We should,
Because if we had more questions, there was some.
Ms. Farland, let's go.
I can't be certain that that's what we said. I'm not sure. But it would, I mean, if there's a way to find out, that would be great.
But
I know
either
that the
way-
meeting was just yesterday. So,
But I just, if we're doing it in exec, but we're handing out written notes, that defeats the purpose of doing it exec. So if it is written, it has to be
we
collected.
would have to collect.
Yeah, okay.
I think
Yeah, we
we
would
had
have to
said that.
collect it.
Okay.
I thought.
I mean, do you see an issue with that, Ms.
With
Wellington?
typing up the notes from
And just
yesterday.
an exact,
No,
Well, for type.
Why do we have to say that? Why can't the person just read it?
I would gladly just share a summary
yeah,
of the
yeah, I
event.
think that's.
I would gladly do that. And present it in even the next executive session. I will gladly do that.
Okay. Ms. Hayes?
I have two new items. Excuse me. The first one is that SEPTA and OTES both have their meetings tomorrow at 7 p.m. For those parents and community members that are watching. I apologize, I don't know if there were other schools, but I do know that on the 15th, 7 p.m. is SEPTA and OTES PTA. That's the first one. And then the second one is I saw an awesome post with Miss Pelea standing in front of a digital sign, if you will, at Wayside. I'm sorry, is there
No, I was just,
whispering going on or
go ahead. Something to be mentioned. Go ahead.
is there a regarding this television, I guess, or monitor? Are all schools getting it or what do we call that? I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, it's a display board, which we already have at TOIS and the high school. And to be honest, I'm not certain if there's one being installed at Wanamassa or OTES, but I will find out. Are you sure? No. I know I did see it too. I wasn't sure if it was. I'll have to ask.
Was
her
that a
about it.
PTA purchase?
It may have been, so I have to double
Okay.
check on that with her. And I don't remember that being in the budget, so I think it may have been.
Okay.
Anything else, Ms. Hayes?
No, that's it.
Ms. McGovern?
I was just gonna mention, I try not to mention school events because I try to let our superintendent announce them. So I was trying to just mention to you to mention the play, but since it's coming out, the play is
Thank
happening
you.
at the high
I
school
did
this week.
forget.
So I apologize.
Okay, is there any other new business? Moving on, any public comment on any topic from anyone in the room?
First, I'm gonna return the sign-in sheet that I stole earlier, sorry. I have a few comments and they're kind of all over. I'm not really sure where to start. I'm going, I guess, the private school bus information. I think that it's a good idea to have those numbers presented, but I hope in addition to knowing that it's statutory that we provide that busing, I hope that the presentation will also include the fact that we take the tax money from these families and they don't tax the school district at all because they don't use the school district. So if you've got about 400 kids that you're sending out of district, and granted, maybe some are rental properties, but the owners of those rental properties still pay property tax, that would equal somewhere in the neighborhood of about $2 million worth of tax money that these private school, the kids that take the buses for private schools, it's still a net win on Ocean Township's part. So while it does cost $400,000, we're still up like 1.6 million from those students. So I kind of hope that that still is included. I had a question regarding one of the votes. It was 7.2, which was just a vote on the minutes, and there were 2 board members that voted no. Customarily, board members will vote yes, or if it's a no, it's because there's corrections in the minutes, or recuse themselves if they weren't here. Can I have any kind of explanation why there would be 2 no's? Was there anything incorrect? I mean, I read them and I was at the meeting. Is there any reason why those? Well, and I think it was, I'm not sure, I know it was Mrs. Hayes and I think Mrs. Tallarico. Is there anything wrong in the minutes?
Ms. Sylvia, I'm not allowed to direct questions.
Are you kidding? Like they're not allowed to talk?
No.
When did that happen? I had no idea. Well, if there's anybody that might be able to follow up with me, because if it's a vote and there's a no, we might want to know if there's a reason. Otherwise, I'm just going to surmise it was spite.
So this section of the meeting is for public comment.
Okay, I'm going to continue. I'm sorry. The gift giving, I was here when we made that policy, and it was born out of, we had an enormous amount of parents that were writing, and their colleagues, the kids' colleagues in classes, parents were giving gifts for holidays, and it seemed typical, like maybe $25 gift certificate and stuff, but there are an enormous amount of families that can't afford that. So the kids were feeling really badly. So we created a policy that added in encouraging the kids to do maybe home, like handmade gifts and cards and other ways of saying thank you as a way to protect some of the kids that don't have the same resources. So that's why the policy was made. And the fact that Kelly, you said that it doesn't seem like there's an issue with over gift giving means that that policy is working, because it wasn't there before and it was a problem. So I just wanted to give a little bit of background on that. Gift giving. Regarding the motion for censure, there is actually a U.S. Supreme Court decision from, I think it was 2022, regarding K through 12, that school boards do have the right to censure board members. So I'm sure your legal person can look that up as easily as I did. And just completely off topic, 2 of the most wonderful women I know. One is the leader of this board and the other is the leader of the union, share a birthday, which is today. So I will be, and I know Mrs. Gilman's not here, but I would be remiss if I didn't say happy birthday to Mrs. Connolly and in her absence also, Mrs. Gilman. I think I'm going to hold policy talk until I see if you guys move forward with the conflict policy. It sounds to me as though it's going to be something along the lines as you can be elected here, but you can't serve as president. If that's a sense that I kind of got. So I'll see if that moves forward. Each board member has 1 vote, the same, and the president just conducts the meeting. It's no different than any other board member. So I was just hope that you'd be mindful in that. Mr. McCarthy, thank you very much for your motion. If you're not careful, you're going to restore the faith and confidence that the public has in this board. So thank you for that. That's it. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Ms. Sylvia.
I'll keep it quick. She is really short. Allison Connolly, President, Township of Ocean Education Association. Thank you. It's the best I can say is thank you. It's a great place to be when the union feels supported by the board. And I think I speak for many of us when I say in the days and weeks following what happened, behaviors and social media posts and things like that really made us feel like some of the board members were not taking us seriously. So this act tonight is huge and we really appreciate it. And we appreciate your support on behalf of our colleague and on behalf of us. So thank you.
Anyone else have a comment this evening? Ms. Conway, is there anyone in the queue for public comment?
No, Madam Vice President, there are no commenters.
All right, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion. Adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
Can I bang the gavel? Just
Yeah.
my only chance. Meeting adjourned.